Y'all, it is finally time. We're going to be doing our 2025 Techo Kaigi. So there is a lot of journals on my desk right now. And the truth is that for the most part, I'm not going to be talking about 2024 because I want to make a dedicated video for 2024 and kind of going over what worked, what didn't work, kind of reviewing all of the things that I used in 2024 as like a final 2024 review. So that's going to have its own separate video. But of course, to be able to talk about the new journals, there might be moments where I have to talk about the old journals. So that's going to be what's happening in today's video. So welcome to the LNM channel, or welcome back if you are a returning viewer. I want to say just before anything else to check the subscribe button and make sure you're subscribed if you think you are. Because oftentimes when you think you are, you actually aren't, because YouTube just feeds you the same stuff. Hi, Suki. Okay, yeah, we love that for us. We absolutely love that for us. Say hi, Suki. Say hi, Suki. Hold on, let's show your face. She's like, no, I don't want to show my face. I don't want to show my face. There's her face. There's her little face in her belly. In her belly. Oh, so good. So good. Okay, let's get out of here. So I do have a Q1 Techo Kaigi. I have a mid-year Techo Kaigi. So if you want to look at what I've been using or what I had planned to use in those, go ahead and check that out. I was originally going to do a Q3 Techo Kaigi. No, that would have been the mid-year, right? Anyways, who knows at this point. The point is that this is going to be chatty. This is going to be very chatty. Let me fix my gain here on the mic. And I don't really have a set like plan. I'm just going to wing it, if you will. I do have here kind of like a preliminary Techo Kaigi. This is version 2. I do have a version 1 right here, as you can see. And I already have some updates as well that I needed to go through with my patrons. So yeah, I've been avoiding this video very, very much so because I keep going back and forth on what I want to do and how I want to use my journals. And the truth is that I wanted to actually do the Techo Kaigi after all of my setups were completed. So the goal was, or the plan was, that I was going to record all of the setups, and then once the setups were done, those would get posted on YouTube. You guys would have already seen, at the time of me recording this, I've already posted my Passport TN setup. So that was the plan, right? I like post the setups, and then once all the setups were done, I would do the Techo Kaigi. But there's quite a few things that I'm still pending to arrive. As I've been doing setups, I've noticed that I've needed certain things. So in order to avoid kind of making everything delay, I figured we would go ahead and do the Techo Kaigi first, kind of just talk about what my lineup is looking for next year. And then if there's any changes later on, we can always discuss that. It's not like we haven't all been here before. We all go through this struggle of going back and forth in journals. This is not new. It's part of the hobby. Like, I'm not mad about it. That's just, it's one of the things I enjoy, right? And this has actually been one of the longest standing. It's probably because I'm doing YouTube videos and I have a Patreon related to it. But this has been like my longest serving hyperfixation in terms of hobbies. So that's nice. But yeah, I figured we could talk about what my lineup is going to look like next year and yeah, what have you. So I think that the easiest thing to start with is probably the planning portion, because like many other people that I've seen here, I am one of those people that needs to kind of have planning like functional, separate from memory keeping and journaling. And really early on, I kind of knew that I wanted to change my sort of functional system. This year I've been using the TN. I've been using, well, actually, in the beginning of the year, I used the hobonichi cousin, the Avec. I used this for functional, which is reminiscent of some of the functional that I was doing. So like towards the latter year of 2023, I also used the hobonichi cousin, and I didn't start off using this for functional. I actually don't remember what I started off using for functional. I think it might have been a TN. Oh, no, I lied. It wasn't a TN. It was, I started using a Weeks for functional planning, and that didn't work at all. And then I switched back to the cousin, and that was working well. But then I eventually changed it over to the TN system, and I've been using my camel for that. And I kind of just have, let me see where I can take you so that I don't show anything confidential. So I've been using a combination of the weekly horizontal. This was gifted to me by a subscriber, which I am eternally grateful for because they were sold out by the time I wanted to use this. This is the second half of the year. So I've been using that for kind of planning. And then I've been using a grid notes page in the back for for just general notes, because there's one client particularly that I take a lot of notes for. And then I had set up the monthly in the front as well to kind of do pre-planning, but that hasn't been really working much at all. So that's kind of like what the functional system was looking like in 2025. And again, I'll talk more in depth about that later on, but I knew that I wanted to change it pretty early on. And I knew that the one I wanted to go for was the Take a Note. Now, something that I will say, I have already started the setups for some of these journals. So there's a bit of a spoiler involved in how the setups are looking like. I apologize for that in advance. Like I mentioned, that was the original plan, was doing the Techo Kaigi after. If you don't want spoilers for any of this journal setups, then my recommendation is to pause and watch this later. Put it in your watch later so you don't forget. But if you don't mind the spoilers, then there's that. So pretty early on, I knew that I wanted to take a note. And so I'm so excited with how this take a note looks, guys. Like I am so proud of it. It doesn't look like a take a note at all. But I've not used a take a note before. But my dear friend Maddie from Hello Naya and Mark from Mark's Mellow, they use a take a note. And so I was heavily inspired by them. And I decided that I wanted to do the take a note for functional planning. And the reason for that is because I find myself needing to have daily plans, a place for like daily tasks, but I also do really like the weekly setup of it all. Something that I also like is trackers. I noticed early on, I also started with like a health planner in my weeks, and I just didn't like having all of those things separate. And something else that I experimented with at one point in the cousin was doing my wins in the monthly, and I did show that in one of my flip throughs for the second half of the avec. And I mentioned how I really did enjoy it, right? So for July, I did my wins here and kind of just kept track of certain things. So kind of one of the things that I do often is I do tend to kind of jump around in my same kind of journal ecosystem. So I will kind of alter the way that I'm using certain journals throughout the year. So for example, like talking about the hobonichi cousin avec, I used it functionally in the first half of the year, and I've been using it creatively in the second half of the year. It is still a journal system that I bought, but I'm experimenting with different ways to utilize it and see what I like best. And so throughout the year, you experiment, you kind of figure out what it is that you're liking, what it is that you're not liking, and then you use that information to inform what you're going to do next year, right? And so for me, I realized that for functional and kind of like general trackers and what have you, I kind of want to have that all in the same place, ish. So there are certain weekly trackers that I kind of want to use to hold myself accountable. And so that I feel needs to go in a space where I'm looking at it every single day, which would be my functional planner. So the idea is that I'm going to use the certain areas of the weekly for tracking. And then I haven't decided if I want to use the dailies as dailies or if I want to do something similar to what I did in the beginning of the year in my cousin, where I would kind of use the vertical weekly as goals instead of using the actual days. Let me see if there's anything I can show you in here that isn't super confidential. Let's see. I think this will work. Okay. So like here, for example, instead of using the days for actual tasks, I would do the days and kind of do like general categories of what I needed to get done in the week and kind of have it as a like a weekly task list. There's not really anything in here I can show you, but I would use them as categories is essentially what I'm trying to say. And so I haven't decided if I want to do that, right? So like, let's say on Monday, I'll put all of the tasks as they come in of what I need to do for client A. And then on Tuesday, that will be the designated space for client B and so on. And then maybe use the top space for like anything that's due that specific day. I have decided with the functional planning after watching, whose video was it that I watched, and it totally blew my mind. Okay, yes, it was in fact who I thought it was. I've already ordered that, so that's not here just yet. But I was watching a video by Little Coco Studio, and they mentioned that they use the supplemental weeks for time blocking. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually noticed that I was really needing some time blocking, so I kind of did that in my hobonichi cousin, the vertical. I did some time blocking in that, but honestly, it's a little too big. And so after seeing Little Coco Studio's video about that, I was like, that's what I need. And so in conjunction with this, I'm going to have a Hobonichi Week vertical supplement, which is like an A6 size, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to use that for time blocking. Something else that I decided that I was going to do is I'm going to have a pre-planning system, but that's going to be digitally. So one of the things that I went back and forth with multiple times, and I have been going over it multiple times, as I mentioned earlier in the monthly insert, I didn't end up using it. is that I need the flexibility of being able to move things around, but I like the idea of writing it myself. And so I struggle a bit with certain like task managers like Notion, or I used to historically use a lot Todoist. And I still use it occasionally with certain clients, but for kind of like social media planning and all that jazz, I have been struggling with it, and I've been struggling to do analog. And so what I realized that I want to do is I want to do pre-planning digitally, because I can still write things down, but then I can very easily with like GoodNotes or Notability move things around if I need to, without the hazard of having to like erase, because that's another thing. One of the things that I purchased early on in the year were friction pens so that I can erase, but it messes up the paper too much, and that's really annoying to me. And so I didn't like that. So my functional system is going to consist of this. The monthlies will be like where my wins are, and some other tracking. I haven't 100% decided what tracking I'm going to do. I definitely need to think about it a little harder because we're so close to the start of the new year. But honestly, these past couple of weeks have been brutal. Very, very difficult. We've experienced some pet loss. My mom's cat passed away a couple of days ago, and I am going to be going into surgery, some gallbladder surgery, gallbladder removal surgery, at the end of the month. And so I need to think about these things because time is ticking. Time is ticking. But things have been so crazy that it's been hard. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this just yet. But yeah, there's things that I need to think about. Originally, I had thought about maybe using this for tracking of like stats, which is something that I did in the cousin this year. Let me look for it so that I can show you. Says I'm not going to talk about this year's lineup, does it anyways? So you can kind of see here I did some tracking, but this proved to be a little too much. Although I did really like seeing, depending on how and where I was posting, how my stats were affected. So I might go back to doing this because I do think that my stats were doing a little better when I was keeping track of like where I was posting and where I wasn't. So I might use this again for that, but I haven't 100% decided. And then, like I mentioned, I'm going to use the monthlies as wins in the monthly boxes. And then I have these other sides that I could use. I might end up using this for after the fact, right? So like instead of pre-planning what I want to post and what have you, I'll just write down what I actually did end up posting after the fact. That's something that I considered as well. And yeah, that's kind of like what I'm thinking about the monthlies. And then, of course, the weeklies being kind of like a hub for what I need to get done in the week. I considered maybe doing on this section any appointments, and I think that's often used for that, appointments and kind of like day specific tasks. I'm kind of going back and forth on that. I haven't 100% decided, but I know that Mark uses this for, I think, tracking what they eat in the day. That might be a good thing to do here as well. And I was watching one of Aaron Ware's videos, and they used Saturday and Sunday as like notes pages. So they kind of covered this up and we're using this as a notes page. And I really like that idea because, like what they said, even if I do work on the weekends, mostly it's runoff of what I didn't get to do in the previous days of the week. And so I don't necessarily need these 2 days specifically. What I had originally thought about was using these 2 days specifically for tracking. So that's another option. And kind of do like my weekly tracking. So kind of like what I've been doing is tracking morning pages and cat litter. But there are other things that I would like to track as well that I used to track like in my health tracker, my health planner in the beginning of the year. So like, for example, I would track, let's look for it. I would track my antidepressants, daily haikus, reading, when I went outside, things like that, weather, sleep times, steps, coffee intake. So those are certain things that I had kept track of that I maybe fell off of because, again, it was just too many journals to keep. I think it's not so much that there's too many journals for me to keep track of. It's more of I feel the need to set them up every week. And the more journals I have to set up every week, the more tedious it becomes. That's kind of one of the reasons why I've been trying to do setups. Well, I just started trying that in December. I posted a video. I'll leave it linked up above if you want to check. I set up all of my spreads for December in my media journal and what have you. I think that setting it up in the beginning of the month, it definitely saves me time. But that's not something that I can do with every single journal. So like, for example, my daily pages, that's not really something I can do. That's kind of like as I go situation. But Yeah, the more journals that I have to set up on a weekly basis, the more difficult it becomes. So, kind of keeping tabs on how many journals I need to set up on a weekly basis is what's kind of gonna give me that I guess that space for being sustainable in my journals. And so that's kind of like the plan for this main take a note. The other thing that is going to be a part of the functional system. So it's this along with it's 3 journals essentially. It's going to be a digital for pre-planning, it's going to be the weekly supplement, the Hobonichi weekly supplement for time blocking when I need it, and then the workhorse where all of my tasks are going to go is in here. I do definitely need to get a notes book, but that's just going to be a regular notes. I haven't decided what I'm going to use for that. I'm currently using a TN insert, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a TN insert. I might just get like a pen and gear or something. I don't really need a lot of notes. I don't need something fancy, I guess is what I'm trying to say for notes pages. So the next part of my functional, and this is more of like a yearly book, is this bi-weekly from Take a Note. And originally I had purchased this to be my media log because I had a completely different idea of what I was going to do for my media log, but I have since changed this to be, again, I am going to be using one of Erin Ware's terms because I just love how she names things. She calls this type of system that she has her North Star. I was thinking I could do the same, or like a compass. It's essentially a place where I'm going to register my goals and kind of keep track of more goal-oriented tasks, right? So if I'm tracking more day-to-day things here that just kind of like build up and help me stay sane and on, working within the week, these will be goals related to kind of yearly things. And so you have the bi-weekly, and I think what I'm going to use the bi-weekly for is kind of to I haven't 100% decided because at first I thought maybe I could do kind of like daily. Oh my God, I totally bent the paper here. Maybe like daily blurbs, kind of similar to what I would do in my 5-year diary. But I'm going to be using my 5-year diary, or I'm going to be trying to use my 5-year diary a little more. That's a subject for something else altogether. Another thing I considered was doing the videos that I posted on whatever day it was, like the main YouTube videos. Or like doing stats in here as well. So that's kind of like where I'm going with, like, I don't know if I should do stats in here or stats in here. This kind of became an extra little journal that now has no particular purpose. And so I still have to come up with some ideas on how to use this. But I do think that kind of having it as a, like a little yearbook, would be a good idea. I also kind of thought about maybe having it be like my general index for the year. I've talked about that before, kind of having unconventional indexes where I can just kind of write down where each day is reflected in my journals. That's another possibility. And then I would have kind of, there are quite a few pages here in the back that I intend to have as like my goals pages for each month and kind of like my monthly review. I think I have enough pages, if I remember counting correctly, I have enough pages to do my goals for the month and my reviews for the month. And so that is what I'm going to be using those pages for. Now I just have to decide what I'm going to be doing every other spread with every other spread. Because yeah, I haven't 100% decided. But yeah, that's going to be like in conjunction what my functional system is going to look like. And I do have to purchase I think I'm going to purchase a cover for this. I haven't 100% decided if I'm going to do that yet, but I do have an idea of which one I want. If I do, then you guys will find out, but I'm not going to say it yet because I'm not 100% sure and I don't want to jinx myself. So that is the functional system. How long have I been talking already? Geez. Okay, 20 minutes. My goodness. So that's the functional. In terms of memory keeping, this is where things get a little fun. Let's do the hours journal first. So the hours journal, I've also already set this one up. I apologize, but I'm going to be using this as a kind of like creative space. So this is going to be like my picture book, if you will, is the idea that I have. I do monthly printables on Patreon, and I think that I'm going to use the monthlies to feature those monthly printables. And I'm also going to do so something that I've been doing in here, and I'm super behind on it, mind you, so who knows, but I've been doing daily dots, colors to kind of represent a memory from the day. And so I was thinking that I can do that in here. I kind of like the spacing for it. So I had also pondered maybe doing that in the actual weekly and then having a blurb here, that is still something that I could possibly do. I kind of haven't decided on which one I prefer, whether having the dots in here and the blurb, which I feel would be perfect because it's almost like a little specimen box. I think that this would be great. I'm just kind of worried about the size of the circle. And then having this be where all of my pictures are, because that is something that I've done as well historically. Where's my media journal? I used to do that in 2021 digitally, where I would do pictures in, so kind of like this, right, where pictures are in the monthly. But these are all media related, right? This would not necessarily be just media. This would also have like pictures from my day to day, even though media could show up here because media is an important part of my day to day. So I'm debating on whether I want to have the pictures in the monthly and then the circles in the weeklies, or if I want to have the pictures in the weeklies and the circles in the monthlies. I'm kind of going back and forth on that. And then I haven't really 100% decided on what I'm going to use the free notes pages for, but I'll probably end up collaging over them for the most part. Yeah, I haven't really decided what I'm going to do here whatsoever, but I think I'll probably just end up, I'll find a use for them, I guess. But really even if I don't end up finding a use for them, the main points are going to be the weeklies and the monthlies. And so I'm kind of going back and forth on what I prefer. I still haven't really decided. I think it's going to depend on, I don't know. I think I might have to do like an experiment to see if I like the size of the circle. And I need to find my bigger stencil, because here I can kind of get away with about that size of a circle, maybe smaller actually, because I want to have space for the writing, but like maybe that size circle. I could even potentially do this size circle. And then I have the writing underneath, kind of similar to what I'm doing in the hobonichi right now. But in here, I would need to do a bigger circle. And again, I have a stencil somewhere for the bigger ones, but I don't know if it being that big will be something that I like or not, because I do tend to like a smaller little dot. But that's kind of like where I'm going with that. This is going to be a much more visual space, because I struggle historically with printing out images. So kind of having a dedicated space where I know that images will go is better than having to figure out how I'm going to do images in my daily log or what have you, if that makes sense. Because I love having images, but it's also just a hassle to print them out for me. I really struggle with printing out images. And so trying to make it as easy as possible for me, which is maybe why it would be better to just do them in the monthly, right? Because it's a pre-established space. And I could always just like, that might be better. I don't know, guys. This is one of those things that I've been going back and forth on for a really long time. And so I don't know just yet. But yeah, that's what the not the common planner, the Hours Studio Journal is going to be. Next up, let's just talk about morning pages, I guess, because that's pretty simple. I use an A5 for morning pages. I used up this one in the beginning of the year, and I have been finishing up on my October journal to just finish up the pages. I have about 5 days left in here of morning pages, so once that's done, I'm gonna go into the one that I had already set up. And basically I just do 3 pages a day in the morning. I try to, and it's just stream of consciousness, and it really helps my state of mind to kind of just dump things out of my brain and kind of check in, see what my emotional capacity is, what my physical capacity is, what I have that I've been thinking about, if I'm hyperfixating on anything, if there are tasks that I just want to that just come to mind that I need to do. What I've been doing is kind of keeping my passport, which again I mentioned already that I set up next to me as I'm doing my morning pages, so I can kind of log as I go. But morning pages are saying they are a huge part of my creative system, and I am not the same person if I don't do them. But essentially, they will just live in another A5 journal. Once I finish with this one, I don't think I have any other ones that I need to use up. I've been kind of just using journals that I have that haven't been finished. I think I might have actually one more journal. It's not an A5. I think it's an A5 Slim. It's a really old one. I might have that one. I'll probably use that up. But then once that's done, I have to figure out what journals I'm going to use. But that is a future me problem, because right now I definitely have still some left over that I can use. So let's put that away. And then we can talk about... Oh, goodness. I haven't really done much in my Japanese journal, so that's going to stay. I haven't really done anything with it, honestly, in months and months. So that still exists, but it will go on to 2025, and nothing special there. let's talk about the little passport because I've already done the setup for that and what have you. The plan for this one is to be my everyday carry, my, as Aaronware says, comfort blanket journal. And I've already sensed that happening where I feel like this is just so special, like a little, I don't know, like a little comfort blanket. It's so nice to kind of just go around with it. I think I've purchased a Leuchtturm pen loop. I think I'm going to use it in conjunction with my Lamy Safari Black um, with black ink so that, yeah, they just go together. It's just so nice. And that way I know that wherever I go, I take this with me from my office to my kitchen to my mom's room to, well, my mom's house to my grandma's kitchen to outside. So I take this with me everywhere, and I usually have it now with me next to my desk as I'm doing morning pages, and that way I can use my field notes to kind of like write down what's going on. So I bought a little Leuchtturm pen loop, and I'm going to be putting that on the craft envelope to be able to put the pen loop. And then, and it's funny because I'm historically not very fond of pen loops, but I'm going to try it out and see how I like it. And if I don't, I will continue doing what I usually do, which is either kind of like tucking it on the cover, or kind of like tucking it here with the pen, with the cover loop. So inside, if you haven't watched the setup video, I have 2 cards. Again, just emotional support cards. I've been really into Corazon lately. My beautiful baby boy, Luffy. This is going to be basically like a reference. This is going to be a insert that will live in here for the long term. In fact, this is probably going to be the insert that most is going to feel like a comfort blanket because it's meant to live here forever, or as long as I can, it has pages in it. It is going to house reference stuff. So I'm going to do swatches of my watercolors and put the names of them here. I'm going to do swatches of my Tombos and put the names of them here, and my colored pencils, so that if I go out, I know what I have in my stash and I don't buy duplicates of them unless I need to buy duplicates of them. And then I'm also going to put lists of books that I'm still pending to receive. So like, not receive, but buy. So like I do collecting of manga, and there are certain series that I have that I need to still get some volumes for. And so I will put which ones those volumes are, and then I will cross them out as I do them. And yeah, just kind of like a space where this is kind of long-term notes, if you will. Another thing that I purchased and I'm waiting on is the monthly insert. I did end up deciding that I wanted the monthly insert, and I'm going to be using that as a health journal of sorts. Something that I also did in my cousin, which I'll show you. July. So you can kind of see these dots, and those dots represent certain health related things, right? So it represents when I get a migraine, when I drink painkillers, and then I also have red dots for my period. And then I'll put light spotting, high flow, and whatever. I'll put like little signifiers for that. And so I really like that form. I've noticed that I like that form of health journaling. So I decided that I was going to do the monthly insert. And since I'm going to have this on me everywhere I go, I think that that's probably the best way. I had considered doing the health log in the, where am I? Over here. It's over there in the take a note. But I realized that, first of all, it's really big. I don't necessarily want to take that to the doctor. And then also, I don't necessarily want to have all of my health related stuff next to my wins, because I don't necessarily want to show that to my doctor and then have them read everything, So I think that having like just a very, is it conspicuous or inconspicuous when you can't tell what something is? You never know which one it is, but one or the other, whichever one is the right word. It's much better to just have a little monthly that I can have my dots in, know what the dots represent, and what have you. So that's also on its way, and that will live in here as well. I also have my eyeglass cleaner, my glasses cleaner, because I always have dirty glasses. And so since I'm always going to have this on me, that's a great way to do that. And then I am debating on whether, and that's going to depend on once I get my monthly, how it feels. I might do this in the reference one. I might put quotes that are important to me that I want to have with me all the time. I might put that in here. If I don't mind how bulky it feels with the monthly, I'll have a separate quotes one. But if I don't like it, then I will have the quotes in here. I don't think it'll be that many anyways. It's just going to be a select few that, again, just feel like comfort to me. And so aside from that, A field notes will live in here. If you watch the setup video, you will know that this is a different one because the one that I had originally decided is going to be for 2025. So in the meantime, I just got my old haiku book and have been doing notes in here, kind of like of what I need to do and what have you. It's just going to be a little notes book that I can then chuck out once they're full. It's going to have, like, if I want to do some media reactions and my media journal is not anywhere near me, I will put this in here to transfer later. It's basically going to be a scratch pad, right? Like anything that I need to write down will go in here, and then I can transfer that to a pertinent notebook, or I can forget about it. And I will be archiving these along with my archive at the end of the year, because this to me is like life as it happens, you know? Like I am one of those people that probably archives things more than they should. Um, like if I'm gonna be a hoarder of anything, it's a hoarder of memories, and for me, everything is a memory. And so, even though I don't know, I just feel like this is important to me, right? So I don't judge anyone for throwing out notebooks, but I really struggle with that because I feel like I don't know, this is also me, right? Like the pretty ones is me, and the ugly ones is me, and this is life as it happens, right? Like, what did I need to write a note about? What was important to me at that particular day? And so, yeah, I don't want to throw them out, but that's the passport, my EDC. I'm very, very excited that this is a part of my system. I have been loving this black so much more than I thought I would. I just flicked you guys off. I'm sorry. I'm very, very happy that Maddie convinced me to get this, because this has been life changing for me, and I've only been using it a couple of days. So I think aside from that, I think we can finally start talking about the daily log and the media journal, perhaps. I'm going to be using a sketchbook. This is a sketchbook that I started this year. I'm going to continue using that. And actually, before I even get into the daily log and the media journal, because I think that this is a conversation that is important to me because it's one of my favorite journals, let's talk about the creative aspect of journaling and kind of like junk journaling and what have you. And this kind of leaks into the daily log, but I have been using the hobonichi weeks, the cousin, as a sort of art journal, if you will, kind of like a magpie art journal, junk journal, inspiration book. I have been enjoying it, but I kind of struggle with the front pages, the monthlies and the weeklies. There's no real point for me in using them. I did decide that I was going to let this kind of like leak into next year and just continue using it as a art journal. But that being said, additional to this is just kind of be there and kind of like leak into next year. And if I want to do, a creative project, then I will do that in here if I want to. It's just kind of there. That being said, I decided that I wanted to do all of my junk journaling next year in a different system. So let me get it because it's tucked under everything. I purchased this rings binder. This is an A5 rings binder that Megan Rihanna talked about in one of her videos. And I really like the idea of having a leather one. Look, they match. They're so cute. I forgot actually that this was black. I told Maddie that I didn't have anything black before, but yeah, I guess I did have this one. So the plan is that I'm going to do all of my junk journaling in a rings binder. Well, not in a rings binder, but the thing is that I have a lot of loose paper, and I don't really like gluing some of those papers because they're too thick. I don't like gluing them into journals. I don't like gluing them into here. They're just big, and like I don't have another purpose for them, and I need to find a purpose for them. And so I do a lot of junk journaling in the year. I participate in challenges like Junk Journal January, Junk Journal July. I want to do more junk journaling with my own kind of like junk and ephemera, and have spreads kind of similar that are not junk, but they use ephemera that I received, kind of like, this Happy Mail spread that I got from Maddie from Hello Naya, and this Happy Mail that I got from Mina Pomelo. Like, I want to have a space for those things that doesn't necessarily become huge like this. I really enjoyed using this journal, but I think I want to try and see if I can do those types of spreads in here. And at the end of the year, I'll bind it together into a book. These are just the things that came in here. I don't necessarily, I can use this. I do also want to, so for example, in this journal and in this journal, which is this original Tomoe River paper, and this is Sanzin, if I'm not mistaken, there are blank pages. So what I decided that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them out of here and create collage pages along with some of my other ephemera. That way, because I know that these are very good with watercolor and ink and all this other media, so I'm going to be doing collage pages with some of the empty ones that are in here. Because these are more functional journals, I don't really care too much about like destroying them, truthfully. And that way I can use some of those up. So that's one of the plans that I have for here. I'm really excited for this one and kind of seeing how it ends up. I kind of like that it can continue to grow and I can glue it, not like really be afraid of gluing things in, and kind of having a space for all of my junk journaling projects to kind of like live together. Once they no longer fit in here because they're too much, I'm just gonna kind of like temporarily bind them together with some clips. And then at the end of the year, there will be a whole project where I actually bind it together into a book. And that'll be my junk journaling book for the year. I'm really, really excited about that. So we shall see what that ends up looking like, but that is the plan for junk journaling. And so now let's finally talk about daily logging and media journaling. So because of certain things that have happened in the last couple of months and just experimenting in my media journal and the hobonichi weeks and my vertical TNs, if you've watched my videos, you know that this year I've been doing most of the year daily logging in TNs. So this is volume 2, this is volume 3, and where's volume 1? This is volume 1, which was mostly backlogged, truthfully. These are in just either blank inserts. I think the first 2 were in blanks. Yeah. And then this one was a gridded insert, but it's essentially just daily logging, right? Like I every day will write a little bit, like kind of stream of consciousness and what have you. I really struggled throughout the year because I wanted to add pictures. I started off in a paper test B6, but I didn't feel comfortable adding pictures into that because it would get too bulky. And then I was also struggling with kind of like the media journaling aspect to it. I think I started in the paper test B6 and it was together, right? And so I was media journaling and daily logging together. And you can kind of see, let me show you a spread. So I would start the week off with kind of a media log on a page, and then I would do my daily logging as it went. And most of this was backlogging, so it was nice because I already knew where I could add pictures in, but I realized pretty quickly that that is not necessarily the same when we talk about daily logging. I don't necessarily want to have to wait to add pictures like we talked about earlier. I just really struggle with pictures in general and printing them, and I don't want to wait on pictures and this whole thing. So I kind of went back and forth on that. Eventually, I ended up going into this one, the Common Planner N1 for media logging, which is just a bigger version of what I did in 2023 in Hobonichi Weeks. And going into 2024, what I thought I was going to do was have that take a note. The take a note bi-weekly, I was going to use that as my log portion for the week. So like this side. Where am I here? Let me just find one that doesn't have. So like this side, right? Like the actual log. I was just going to have that. And then I was going to use an insert. Let's say, for example, the Baumkuchen grid. And that was going to be my media log combination. Let me look for it so you can kind of see. So this is going to be my media log combination, right? That being said, one of the things that I did enjoy of what I was doing in the paper test V6 was kind of having, I feel like there's so many journals here, was having the media reactions and the daily logging together. I really enjoyed that because to me, again, media logging is a huge part of my life. Media is a huge part of my life, and I have a lot of opinions on it. It is a special interest of mine. And so I want to make sure that I have a space for it, but also it is part of my daily life, and kind of not having to think about where one goes and where the other one, like the separation of it just doesn't really, I don't vibe with it very much. Something that I considered later was, well, because I ended up deciding that I did want to go into a weeks for media logging again, particularly because of the cream paper, and because I was convinced by Maddie because she's also doing a media log in a weeks. So we are going to be twinning in a weeks, and I did really enjoy media logging in a weeks when I did it. So I'm going back to the weeks, but then I had to decide, okay, am I going to do daily logging in the back? Because I have been doing that in my weeks now. That's one of the experiments that I've been doing, kind of like daily logging here in the back. Am I going to do that with the media journaling? And then once I run out of pages, because I will 100% run out of pages, do I just get another insert, cut it down to the same size as the weeks, and then keep going that way? That was the original plan. One of the things that I and for a while, that was actually the plan that I was going to do. But what I ended up deciding, actually, instead, because then I started practicing and kind of experimenting again, because I love vertical weeklies. and kind of experimenting with that, seeing if I liked it. Let's kind of go through here. So kind of, again, like what we talked about earlier, I go back into journals and use them in different ways to kind of see what I like and don't like. And so here's what my idea is for next year. So when I was looking at my 2023 weeks, which is nowhere to be found, I don't know where it is. I know that it is in this room somewhere, but I don't know where it is, and it is too far away for me to go find it. When I was looking into it, I did a lot of quotes in the back of the 2023 weeks. And I am someone who enjoys collecting quotes, probably more than anything. So two things that are important to me are the media reactions and the quotes. And then the third thing is the images, which, as you know, I have my own insert for that. So, you know, I have this insert where I glue in all of the fan art and stuff. And I've been thinking about, you know, how this will translate, right, into next year, because I don't necessarily like gluing some of these images into the weeks because the paper is so thin. It creates an issue with like turning the page that for me feels awkward. And so I love how this page looks. So I'm going to leave this open because I just really like how this page looks. Well, actually, should I do this page? Because, you know, Senshi is here kind of being Senshi, you know? Let's do this page. JJK and some... Should I just leave it? I feel like there is such chaos in this video. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm kind of going all over the place. Okay, so I know I like collecting quotes. I know I like collecting fan art. I know I need a place to put my media reactions. And I like doing stream of consciousness. And I need sometimes a place for long form journaling. The media logs is going to once again live in the weeks. That is for certain. And then where is here? I went back to what I used to do in 2023, where I kind of like check in the morning of the next day and kind of write a little bit about anything that I need to write about in the previous, of the media that I consumed the previous day. And one of my favorite pages that I've done recently since doing that is this page. I love this page so much. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the weeks, the general weekly pages. Another thing that I'm going to be doing in the weeks is in the monthly pages, I'm going to be doing something similar to what I saw Aaron Ware do, to what I saw Steph do in the journal diaries. I'm going to be doing little dots, and you would have seen that in my December setup as well. I'm going to be doing dots that kind of just reflect or represent series and movies, and just like, okay, when it's a different type of viewing of the data that is in the weeks portion, right? Because in the weeks portion, we're talking about very micro level overview. I write literally everything that I've consumed in the week. So it's very micro level, and then I have color coding for what type of media it is, whether it was like, I don't even have to read what they were to know what it was, right? Like I read manga, I listened to podcasts, and I watched TV shows. I watched one movie, and I know that based on the color system. So that is going to stay the same. In terms of the actual images, I'm thinking I'll probably do this digitally as well, in a similar way to how I'm going to be doing pre-planning. I think I'm going to do this digitally because that way I don't have to worry about printing them out. I haven't decided on that 100% because there is something to me that makes it different about, like, the analog version of it to me is definitely important. And so I don't know if I 100% want to just say, okay, I'm going to do it digitally. I haven't decided yet, but the plan is if I did do it digitally at the end of the year, I will print it and bind it as well. Or I will print it in a TN, kind of like TN insert booklet type situation, and then that'll live together with the media journal. But yeah, the monthlies will be the little dots, and I did already test in this week's. Where is it? Here. So you can kind of see how the dots look. I love how they look, honestly. And I don't know if I mentioned it already in this video, but because I didn't want to have to wait to print out dots and, you know, hate my life, I decided that I was going to use my watercolors. So I've been using watercolors to do the dots, and they look really organic, and I love them. I love how they look. So that's what's going to be going on in the monthlies. And I'm really, really excited about that. And then what I decided that I'm going to do in the notes pages is that I'm going to put quotes in this note pages. So the note pages are just going to be for quotes, and if I need to write something about them, maybe, but I think it's just going to be a place for me to collect quotes, not necessarily write about quotes. If I want to kind of like delve deeper into writing quotes, then that'll go in the daily log or the journal, the daily journal. And if I want to put it in my commonplace, that'll go in Obsidian, which is what I'm using currently as my commonplace. And I'm going to try to find a way to kind of merge that with an index notes system, but we will get to that later because that's something that I still need to think about quite extensively. So this is not necessarily going to be a commonplace. At least for me, commonplacing always involves my take on whatever I'm collecting. This is really more going to be a space for me to collect quotes than it is a place for me to kind of talk about quotes or have referencing. This is just an emotional space for me to collect quotes, not a intellectual space for me to collect quotes, if that makes sense. Like for me, I come at it from two different angles. If I want to think about the quote that I'm collecting in a way that kind of is more intellectual in nature and that I can make connections to, that's something that goes into my Obsidian that I can then link to other thoughts, other quotes, and what have you. This is just going to be a place for me to collect quotes that I like, whether they are from poems, whether they are from books, whether they are from Substack articles or Tumblr posts or Twitter posts or whatever. But that's kind of like the idea that I have with this particular media hub. Then comes the actual insert. So I'm going to be using the Baumkuchen grid insert because it is cream paper. I'm very excited about using this because I did enjoy the Sterling ink insert, but it is white paper and I was really, really wanting to do grid. And I think that the TN grid is just too big for me. I prefer a little smaller grid. So I'm going to be using this for daily logging. I haven't decided if I want to have another insert for long form journaling. So I'm kind of going back and forth on that and whether I want to have this kind of be like an all-in-one journal and kind of have it be a space where like anything in the day that I think about kind of goes in here. That's something that I will probably have to experiment and see how it goes. There is a dog in my yard. Why is there a dog in my yard? Whose dog does this belong to? Oh goodness. Anyways, so kind of like the formatting of it is going to be a little different, I think. So like if you saw my October journal flip through, you'll have heard me talk about how I really enjoyed having the 2 pages for the day because I could write about what happened in the day, but then I could also kind of like write about other things and other notes about what I was thinking about that day, not necessarily just like my thoughts, because for me the daily log is very much about like processing what I'm thinking about, processing, kind of like expelling certain emotions that I have. It's really a place for me to be able to show up for myself. It's a self-care space. But then I also would like to have a space for random notes and things like that. And I've been experimenting with that in the weeks as well. See, like, for example, I have my daily log, but then I also have like a space for notes. And yeah, I've been kind of experimenting with that and kind of seeing, here's the preliminary Techo Kaigi and kind of seeing how that's going to evolve and grow. Another thing that I really miss that I haven't been able to do in the weeks is being able to kind of like glue in ephemera from the day. That's something that is really big for me. And so, for example, as you know, like here's an example of me like gluing in ephemera. And I think there's one in here with like a tea bag label that I really, really like. See, like here, there's a tea bag label I just glued in. Here's packaging and what have you. I kind of like having that in here as well so that it's a little more junk journal adjacent. I really miss that, having a space for like the stickers from the month. And so I like the idea of having the insert. It's just a matter of finding another way to kind of show up in it and have more fun, I guess, and kind of not be super rigid in how I show up in the journal. But this is going to be kind of like my main journal. Let me put this back into the insert I took it out of, which leaves the vertical weekly, which is where I'm going to be doing kind of like my memory keeping, right? So like if the daily log is more of a space for me, at least as I say it, right, is more of like a emotions space where I kind of go through and expel and kind of process. The daily log itself is more of like factual, like this is what happened in the day. And so I've been kind of experimenting with a few different styles of like right, like for example 10 work celebration meeting, 17:30 why am I still on the phone with JDM. It doesn't like rewatching the OA turkey dinner. It doesn't have to be anything like super big, like it's just moments from my day, crying about One Piece until almost 1 a.m, headache, all day working on Patreon printables, and I was exhausted at the end of that day. But then I also kind of experimented this week with, at the end of the day, kind of like doing a general overview of what happened. So early morning wake up to go pick up Gus at the vet and transfer him. As I mentioned, Gus did pass away, so I have a little space for that here. I had actually saved this sticker because we were meant to have him pick him up on Wednesday, and I was saving it so that it would represent him going to sleep in his own little bed, but instead it's representing him passing away. But okay, sorry. Instead, what I was talking about was like having like a summer, like doing it at the end of the day instead of as the day goes on, is something that I'm experimenting with as well. Because normally I do this as the day goes on, but kind of talking about earlier how I want a system where I don't have to do weekly setups for like multiple journals, like a very vast array of journals. I think in the same way, I don't necessarily want to have multiple spaces where I show up in during the day. I just want to have one space where I show up in during the day, and then a space where I show up in the morning, and then a space that I show up in at night, right? So like if I'm showing up in my media journal in the morning to kind of write about the previous day's media, that's one thing. And then during the day, I'm showing up in my daily log and kind of expelling through the day, doing any long form journaling, taking notes about whatever I need to take notes of. And then at the end of the day, I go into my vertical weekly to kind of summarize what it is that happened, right? I think that that is a cool, timeline, if you will, of journals, if that makes sense. And they kind of have their own purpose while still working together. I kind of like that idea. And actually, I think that this together then works as a conjunction of memory keeping, writing wise, right? Like writing and ephemera wise. Well, writing is more like it, and some ephemera, because most of the junk journaling is going to happen in the binder, and any image heavy journaling is going to happen in the hours journal. And so that's kind of like the idea behind it. And I think that these three are going to live in my brown TN, maybe, perhaps. If I end up deciding that, yeah, I feel like this would work, right? Because I can, so let's see. I can do my daily log in here, right? And then I'll have my vertical weekly in here, or vice versa, whatever. And then I will have my weeks kind of living here in the back in the pocket, which I did before. And that works, right? I think the only issue I'm having is if I decide I want to have a long form journal, which I'm not leaning towards. I do a lot of my long form processing in my morning pages. And I think that if I end up needing to do long form processing at night, I want to use my typewriter. So I think I won't do another insert, and then that'll just live in here. The other thing that I did, and I've already prepared it, but of course that's going to go into 2025, is using my olive as my sticker hub. I have all of my stickers in here and some washi tape, and I've been obsessed with it because something that I struggle with is not really having, if I can't see them, I'm going to forget about them. And so there's a lot of stickers that I've forgotten about because I just don't see them very often. And so now that they're all in here, it's a little easier for me to kind of know what I have, what I don't have. I have another sticker insert here that I can fill up with things. And then I do still have this sticker book and this sticker book, which houses my vinyl stickers. But I love having this olive one. So I'm thinking of possibly moving the ones that are in here into the second insert. But I haven't decided that just yet. But that's transferring as well into 2025. And I think that is it. Maybe, perhaps. My goodness. Yeah, in terms of commonplacing, I am still working out the kinks of that. I have been using Obsidian for more intellectual type commonplacing. I've already talked about where I'm going to keep my quotes of just like collecting quotes. And then I have been very interested in doing index cards, but that's still something that I need to consider quite a bit more. I haven't 100% decided what I'm going to do with that. But yeah, I think that's it. I think we went through all the journals. My goodness. An hour. I mean, I knew it was possibly going to take an hour, but I had hoped it wouldn't. Anyways, I think I'm going to stop talking now and let that be that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.